7th grade and 8th grade from Plymouth Middle School who actually piloted a portion of the program last spring. And they're here to share some of the overview of what it entails. And at the end, when we wrap things up, you can always ask questions and we'll go on from there. So I will turn this over to SpringBoard.
Putting my trusty reading glasses on here. So we are all teachers at SpringBoard English Language Curriculum here, and as our principal said, we took a little test drive of this last spring to help us get an idea of what we were in for this year, and it was very, very challenging. So right now, what I wanted to emphasize is that we are working to ensure that all of our students are educated. We want all of them to be career and college ready. And this is a program that was designed by English teachers for English teachers to help us do that for our students, to help us develop all of for our students, the knowledge and skills needed so that they'd be ready when they get to high school for all of those advanced placement classes, and as well if they choose to go elsewhere after high school. So our SpringBoard program, the English language program, is based on the needs of the Common Core, and it's aligned to our Minnesota state standards as well. And of course, the state standards are all encompassing in terms of reading, writing, speaking, listening, and viewing. And all of the program has been built on best practices for teachers and students, and it focuses a lot on higher order thinking, critical thinking skills. And again, getting more precise in our reading and our writing skills as well, involving us more and more in analysis and synthesis of material, and helping kids to develop better problem-solving skills. Also, hopefully, developing a deeper conceptual of understanding the things they're reading, and of course, of media literacy as well. So, in short, the standards basically identify what students should know, and the curriculum is helping us with the how to do it. Okay? So we have these English teachers here from 6th grade. We have Mike Unger and Justin Moe. From 7th grade, we have Lauren Adams, and from 8th grade, Mike Stubbe. And they're going to help us to understand how we meet the standards in our SpringBoard program. Justin?
Thanks, sir. 6th grade. SpringBoard is a very writing-intensive program. Students will need focus and purpose for their writing. There are several opportunities throughout the course of the year for them to demonstrate that. In 6th grade, our 6th graders currently, in a few weeks, they'll be starting their first summative assessment, larger writing assignment, with a personal narrative. The theme for 6th grade throughout the year is change. And everybody experiences change, and I know firsthand that 6th graders especially do. The narrative will focus on an event that brought about change. And the second assessment, a few weeks later, will be a short story, fiction or nonfiction, that incorporates the plot, exposition, climax, resolution, and characters in conflict. Later on in the course of the year, the 6th writing assignment that they'll do a little bit later is an argument and letter of a subject of their choice. They'll have to convince an audience to support their topic and position. So if your children come home and they become very persuasive, you'll know where they got it from. Laura?
And I have to stand behind you so nobody can see how nervous I am. I can teach the kids, but that doesn't mean it applies to me. Just kidding. So for 7th grade, currently right now, we are working towards an assessment, also like 6th grade, for us to write a personal narrative. And that's going to be a situation that they experience themselves. So it really helps when they're writing about things that they like to write about. Later on, we're going to be having an essay that's going to explain the role of advertising and what are the effects on our youth. So those are just a couple from 7th grade.
In 8th grade, we'll also be focusing on writing. It has 6 larger summative assessments. Some examples in Unit 4. They do an argumentative essay, convincing an audience to support their claim about a debatable idea. The essay must use research, experience, and observation. And from Unit 1, they have to write and create an illustrated narrative about an original hero that we're creating in the class that incorporates the stages of the hero's journey.
Again, I'm Mike Unger, tonight, before I came here tonight, I went home and my son who's in 8th grade here came in and I sat down with him to have a quick snack before I got out. And I said, kind of nervous tonight. He said, why? And I said, I have to get up and talk in front of a large group and it makes me nervous. And he said, well, what are you talking about? And I said, this new program called SpringBoard. And his eyes lit up and he said, hey, we're doing that. And I said, that's right, you are. I said, why don't you tell me a little bit about it so I can tell the parents what you think? And he said, well, it's okay. And I said, well, tell me what okay means to you. He said, I don't have to do any more book reports. And I said, well, okay, that's good. He said, but I've got to write these things called essays now. So that's kind of an 8th grade view of it. Anyway, back to what we were saying about SpringBoard. Students are going to be reading a wide variety of texts. Some of the things we'll be covering are novels. The novel Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. A short story, The Jacket by Gary DeSoto. We'll be reading excerpts of Steinbeck's work, including Travels with Charlie. A letter called The First Americans by Scott Peters. We'll be reading and analyzing Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. And we had, during training, we had a whole afternoon of that, and it's tough. You talk about rigor, it's there. We'll also be reading plays. We have one highlighted by Aaron Shepard called The Millionaire Miser. Our drive, though, is for students with the gentle release model. We're going to start with a piece of text as a whole group, and we'll talk about it there. Students will further on and work collaboratively on analyzing it, and then hopefully push them to that outer level of independently, and then synthesizing their own ideas about what they read.
So you're going to notice a lot of commonalities that are happening between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we also read a variety of texts. So if students are interested in let's say, mythology, well, we're reading that. If students are interested in poetry, well, we're doing that too. So a few of the texts that we're reading, a novel called Tangerine. We're also reading some informational texts. We're reading Landmarks of Nelson. Sometimes I can talk, sometimes I can't. And you know, of course, all the middle school students can laugh at that because I'm a goof. So we're reading Landmarks of Nelson Mandela's life, something that's applicable for them, somebody who they know. We're doing poetry. We are reading The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. And like Mike said, this is challenging for them. It's challenging for us, and it's going to be challenging for everyone, but we are all learning together, and we're all doing this together, and it will be a really good one for us. We're also going to read some monologues from Shakespeare, as well as, like I said before, we're reading some myths too.
So to continue the theme of the things we'll read, we're talking about 8th grade here. I'm the 8th grade representative. It really goes along with the rigor. There's some of these things here I know I did personally read in an Ivy school until I was in high school. So back to the reading in the 8th grade, it's rather impressive. So in 8th grade, they'll be reading such things as Oliver Stone's Where I Find My Heroes, The Giver by Lois Lowry, excerpts, not the entire thing, from Homer's Odyssey, speeches such as Elie Wiesel's Noble Acceptance speech, he's the guy that wrote Night, and excerpts from A Midsummer's Night's Dream.
Moving into speaking, viewing, and listening activities now. 6th grade will write 6 of those assessments, as I mentioned, but they will also have 2 large assessments that emphasize group research and debate. That includes preparing a multimedia and visual display that supports the position. Also, they'll have a group research and analysis project that relates to the Shakespeare play Taming the Shrew that Mr. Unger mentioned earlier.
It's my turn again. That was really quick. For 7th grade, we have 2 large assessments that I will tell you about. And these are emphasizing our speaking, viewing, listening. And one of them is a group multimedia presentation of a leader whose choices were impactful on society. Our entire unit, our entire book, focuses on the choices that we make, so very applicable to middle school students. And the second one is creating an original monologue about a topic that sparks a strong emotion like joy or sadness or anger or excitement.
And continuing with grade 8 and speaking and listening skills. We also have 2 large summer assessments that focus on those standards. One is creating a panel discussion about how a larger theme is developed through a Holocaust narrative. And I'm really excited to do because I personally have a lot of interest in Germany and German language and the Holocaust. So. And another is involves the presentation of a scene from a Shakespearean text. Midsummer's Night Dream was the one we had. And that includes elements of comedy and demonstrates understanding of things like props, and stages, and lighting and sound. But we can't go too much into that in the classroom, obviously. But I'm super excited because I know I have some students that like acting.
Okay, some of these things that they've been talking about might be things you thought, hey, wait a minute, I think 8th graders talked about the Holocaust before. I think some kids read Love Giver. Well, that's because we were really good before, but this opportunity with this new curriculum gives us the chance to be really great. And that's what we're excited about for kids, because if we're doing a good job, then they're going to get a better result. So that's one of the good things about the SpringBoard program right now. We want to help all students to make connections from everything they're doing every day to the assessments that they're going to be asked to complete, so that they're going to tie the activities they do every day in class to the assessments. We start out that way and we finish that way every day. So we will make some adjustments sometimes based on student need as we go, because we start from the highest level of rigor for their age range and the highest level of challenge. So the differentiation, where we have to change things, will be mostly based on the strategies that we do to help them understand and help them move ahead in their learning. We want them to acquire the skills. So this program allows us a lot more time for reflection, and it helps us to make adjustments for students based on their needs. So we also have the support of a lot of extra activities that we can implement as we're working with our students. They're completing 6 written large assessments, very large writing assessments, and 2 performance assessments every year. This is a lot of work, and it's a lot bigger. So we need to support some of our learning activities, and we can insert, because of the supplementary activities we have, the resources SpringBoard makes available, we can insert grammar activities where we see a need. We can insert a close reading workshop working with our reading teachers. They're going to help us. So we're working on the same targets. The other thing is that we are going to be working on this differentiation model, where we look and reflect and change and make sure all of our students are getting the learning that they need. So I'm going to turn it over to our 6th grader here to talk about that.
I'm not actually a 6th grader. 6th grade. Sometimes I feel like differentiation typically takes place in content or product or process. Our emphasis is mostly in the process. Really, the instructional strategies that Ms. Lundquist talked about allow teachers to adapt to the instruction to the children, but it still delivers the skills and the knowledge that all the students need. Perhaps breaking up parts of summative assessments into smaller parts. An example may be some students identifying alliteration in a poem as opposed to other students who maybe are creating examples of alliteration. Mr. Reed?
Okay, back to reading. Big piece this year with SpringBoard is that the children will not just be reading for proficiency, but really reflecting and analyzing what they read and really critiquing it at very high levels. we're really pushing for student voice, and we want students to be able to not only respond to text verbally and written, but to be able to support what they're saying with examples from the text, and even things between the lines. They're going to open that up to their peers. They're going to open it up, perhaps if they're willing to, open it up to the entire class. But they will have to support the things that they're writing and saying with evidence from the text.
I am in a special position in that I taught 7th and 8th grade last year, so I was able to pilot both 7th and 8th grade. And so we do a lot of paraphrasing with the text because they are difficult. 8th grade, I mean, they're reading Homer, and 7th grade, we're reading Edgar Allan Poe. It's like you're sitting here thinking, I didn't do that till high school. Okay, well that's fine. So what we're trying to do is we're going to use our differentiation. So we're going to be able to reach different students even though they're at different levels. But there will be a lot of us paraphrasing. Okay, so let's put this in our own words to help students understand because they are difficult texts. And we're also going to be teaching them different reading strategies, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, all of us, so they have success with this.
And looking more specifically at the writing, the differentiation can really come up when we look at every single aspect of the writing process. So there are different strategies for drafting, different strategies for revising and editing, and really those things can be applied when we need them. And like Sue said, there are multiple resources that SpringBoard provides for mini lessons and resources and worksheets and all those wonderful things to provide that extra differentiation when we need it.
Okay, and you probably heard that we do a lot of things with groups. We do things with all kinds of groups. Most of you work, and most of you work doing things collaboratively with other people. We need to teach our kids those skills too. So one of the things we focus on then is group learning as part of our activities. Now, it's not all we do, but we do all kinds of group learning. So sometimes it might be the whole class, sometimes it may be half the class doing something. Sometimes you might divide it into table teams. Sometimes you're going to have partners or triads. Sometimes it's individual study. All these different ways that they're going to learn mirror kind of the activities that we go through in our own lives later. And the social aspect isn't lost on people in middle school. So another thing that I wanted to make sure that you know that these group tasks are usually practice for things that they're going to have to do on their own later. And again, it's part of that kind of gradual release program that Mr. Unger talked about. So all the time that we're working, our challenge is to keep adjusting our pacing and manner to the needs of our kids. And that's what our #1 goal is to make sure our kids are getting what they need when they walk in the door of that high school. We want them to know what they need to know and be ready. So the important thing to remember with differentiation is that we're still going to focus on the goal that every student will achieve the learning targets. And we want to make sure that we emphasize with you that this SpringBoard learning program is for all of our students. Thank you.